Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cordelicchio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast powered by the Suburban Wellness Group. I am in a different environment tonight. I don't know if I like the lighting, but that's okay. We have a very special guest on today. Looking forward to our conversation, Wendy Taylor. Wendy, how are you today?
I am awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you very much. Now, listen. You know, it says here that you're a classical choral soprano. We may ask you to do a little singing here at one point in time, but hold on. Before we do that, this is the point where you just kind of hang out and you don't say anything. I'm going to look over your bio a little bit. I know all the guests, they go like this. All right, let's go. Let's get this over with. But it's always good. So Wendy Taylor, relentless commitment in helping clients identify the unique gifts and value proposition and find a job, very important today, where they can express their full potential and be well rewarded for it. Very difficult in the time of COVID. Rare combination of experience to her practice, deep knowledge of human development through every stage of development into adulthood. How'd you get into this type of a business? What was your
Yeah, well, go ahead. Ask your question. I'm sorry.
All right, you guide your clients, mindsets, traits, skills, what you need to get into a job. Your 15 years management consulting experience, leading over 50 engagements worth many millions of dollars. And when you're not working, you're singing classical choral soprano, keeping score at baseball games. I do that at hockey games, practicing yoga, and making dinner for one of our fabulous dinner salons. I don't know where I'm going first, but I think we're going to go with, how'd you get into this, where you're helping individuals get positions, get jobs, helping them out with mindset? What was that aha moment that brought you to this?
That's a great question. So in my 20s and 30s, I had a lot of people reporting to me, both in the nonprofit world and then the for-profit world. And when I left the venture-backed tech startup after we were acquired in 2003, I joined a management consulting firm. Loved that firm, loved my boss, loved my clients. I missed mentoring and coaching my staff. I didn't have staff anymore. It was me and maybe a couple of project members and a client, and that was it. So I'd actually, when I left that tech startup, gotten some outplacement services, and all the executives were brought into a cohort. We got together for lunch every other week. This is way before COVID. It's 2003. And I became the expert on social media in a job search because I was in my 30s and everybody else in that room, since it was a bunch of VPs, were people in their late 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I started teaching people how to use social media in a job search, and then realized if you don't know what you're looking for, then you're not ready to start applying social media to your job search. And that was the beginning of my coaching people on their job searches.
Interesting how that came about. And did you have training in mindset? Did you have training in skills? Is there any special certifications that you got? Because we all talk about mindset today. Mindset is everything. It's something that, if you don't have a proper mindset, you're not successful in life. You can't be a good mother, father, husband, and all of that. Mindset is what a lot of people are talking about today. Tell us about that.
My first career was as a teacher and as the program director for youth and family services at the YMCA in Central Maryland. And so I found myself on a parenting journey with hundreds of parents. Their children K through 5 were in my after school programs, my day camps, their teens were in my youth leadership programs. We did the after prom party at the Y so the kids wouldn't get into trouble after the prom. And so I've been on those journeys. I understood the needs of a whole family, and I understood the importance of some of those things when it came to career. But at that point, it was all about nonprofit. My mission in life was to help families. I'm now helping families by focusing on the parents' careers, as opposed to focusing on the development of their children outside of the school classroom. So that's really where all that came from, and looking at what makes people perform better, what What has you step up when you go into job interview or you make a presentation at work in front of the big people, the big C-level folks in your company?
Right. How do you help people perform better? Specifically, if I were to come to you and I'm going to make a career change, or I want to advance my career, and I want to have a better mindset, what is it that you do to help people perform better?
First of all, we want to make sure that they're in the right space. But even if they're in the wrong job, we want them to perform well in the wrong job while we work in getting the right job. So
Because you still have to perform in your job, no
Yeah,
matter if it's
exactly.
right, wrong, bad, you still have to perform. Because
The
if you
rule
don't
is
perform, yeah.
keep that job while we look for the better one.
Right.
So what we do is we look at, one of my first questions is about, and that's the old YMCA program director coming back again, I ask about mind, body, spirit practices. And when people are fluent in that language, I say, what is the thing that when you do it, you're a better spouse or a better parent? And usually there's an answer. The Californians, yoga and meditation are the top two, and then hiking. I work with people in other parts of the country. You might have some religious practices as part of that. I had a surfer, and then he had a job interview in Detroit, and we had to figure out what he was going to do instead of surfing.
That's a big leap then, from going from a Californian surfer going over to Detroit into the big city and, dealing and trying to find a job there. So you mentioned mind, body, spirit. Expand on that a little bit more. Where does this come in?
Well, I'm going to use a baseball analogy, but when you're interviewing, questions are coming at you a little bit like this, but this is fun. An interview is stressful. And so an interview, you want to land the interview, and the questions are coming at you like a fastball. So what you want to do is you want to slow down each question, each pitch, so that you can see the seams of the baseball. And the way that you do that is that you're grounded. And I believe that mind, body, spirit practices are the best way to do that. And then when people get the question, it buys them just a few seconds so they can go, oh yeah, I've got a great answer to that.
Right.
Instead of, those really awkward phrases people use, the M's and the O's and all that kind of thing, it buys you some time, and then you come forward with a better version of yourself. But that's only half that inner game. The other is having fun. Right.
So how do you apply the mind, body, spirit to life? How do you, when somebody comes into you, are they just talking to you about the job career, or are they talking to you about other stuff? Listen, my relationship with my 13-year-old son, right, is falling apart here. What do you do at that point, right?
Yeah.
So what is it, and how do you apply that to other aspects of your life?
So my people come to me about a career thing. Some will immediately bring in life. So I have a client who is not married yet, and he is already talking about, we're going to get married, we're going to buy a house, we're going to have babies. And when we have babies, I want to be a more engaged father than my dad was. So we're planning the next job to prepare him for the job after that, for when the babies come.
Right.
Some people are like, I don't want a life coach. I don't need a life coach. I think it's a little weird. Your testimonials mention husbands and children or wives and children. I just want your help on my career. Usually at some point, the spouse or the children will come up. Right. And even if they don't, last year, most of my referrals came from wives of male clients.
Really?
So, yeah.
Interesting how that happened. And you know what? Because when you're looking for a job, you're also thinking, that's why I asked that question, because you're also thinking about your family. Yes. You're going to get married and so forth, right? And in my career as a clinical nutritionist, they're like, well, when I lose all of this weight, I want to look at my wedding. I want to be able to have kids. I want to be able to run around with them. I want to play sports with them. I want to play, guitar. I want to sing classical choral soprano with them. All right, wait a second. Hold on. Where does the soprano thing come in? Tell me.
So I was a serious piano student as a kid. And really serious, as in there's a very famous woman who taught a lot of our great composers, and she also taught my piano teacher. So I'm considered a grand student of Nadia Boulanger.
Oh, yes, I've heard of Nadia Boulanger before. Yes, I have.
So I just sang in church, and that was my thing. I sang in college in a chorale that was mostly music majors. So I was good enough to be in with the music majors, but it was just something that gave me joy. And I've sung in churches and then community choruses for years. And it's something, and I sang alto for a long time. And it was actually a big transition to admit to being a soprano, because
Right.
see, sopranos have a little bit of a reputation for being divas, and the altos are the ones who get all the work done in the background.
Well, I'm from northern New Jersey, so when you say Sopranos, I think of something a little bit
Totally
different. Totally different. But that's a story, Wendy, for another time. How difficult has it been to help individuals out with mindset during the pandemic looking for jobs? You know, we've all had to pivot at some point in time. In my own practice, telehealth became extremely important. I started this podcast, this wonderful podcast. I get to, talk to great people such as yourself. What was that like for individuals looking for a job, and how did that affect their mindset?
It had a huge impact, and that impact has actually evolved over time, and it's not getting better. So last year, I had people who started working with me and the pandemic hit, and they got jobs. They got great jobs. They got dream jobs, and they were happy. And then we just had to figure out how to do the onboarding piece, all that coffee pot, water cooler stuff where you build relationships and are important for your career in the new company. And they had to figure out how to do that online. My introverts loved all being online. My extroverts were miserable. So that was easy.
I'm doing a talk tonight and tomorrow night, and I think I'm an extrovert, and I got to do this through another Zoom call-y type of a thing, and I'm like, oh, I can't deal with these Zoom calls. I love the crowd. I want to be in front of the crowd, right?
Yeah, the energy. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So what's happened now when I talk to prospective clients is they come to me and they say, I'm miserable, and I don't fit here. I feel like an intruder at this company. The company has a family culture, and I want a team environment. I'm never going to get a promotion here. And they come to me with those stories. Those are all real stories. And yet they're afraid to take a step. And that's because everything we've heard talk about mindset has been fear. And so it's actually, there's two camps. There's the fear camp and there's the discipline camp. The discipline camp is, I don't need help. I'm a grown-up. I don't care how miserable it is. I just have to apply to more jobs. And they don't get a job, and they feel like they're doing something wrong, and they just put more discipline to it. And those people just need to be encouraged to say, hey, it's okay to get help, and your spouse will be happy and your children will be happy. And it's actually the responsible thing to do.
Right.
But the flip part is the fear team. And the fear team is just, I'm afraid to make a move right now because all I hear is fear. And that's a very powerful thing. And I'm seeing that with since more than half of my clients are in the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm seeing that with them. Yeah.
And now the job situation and helping people out, not getting any better. We're coming out of the pandemic some, but it's still not where it should be.
I had more people get jobs in April than I've ever had in 1 month.
In April of
2021. And last year, almost every month, somebody got a job.
Right.
And they were not settled jobs. They were dream jobs. The surfer wanted to move to Southern California, and because he wants to raise his children in a surfing community. And he did it. And a lawyer who's always been a do-gooder got a job at Amazon, doing good stuff at Amazon in their do-gooder organization. And she's making triple the money she's ever made before in her life. So people were getting good jobs, and they're getting good jobs now, dream jobs, awesome jobs. They're there. What's actually harder is the mindset for the individual job seeker in a fear-based environment, and B, the interview process is so much worse in an era where we're doing it all by video. It's so much more complex. The things that you would do, a lot of serious jobs, you will be in a conference room with several people in an interview process, and you'll write on a whiteboard, and you'll show off some of what you can bring to the
Right.
table. Now they give you assignments. And so now I don't just interview prep people. It's like every step. Okay, now they've asked me to do this. Now I have to talk to this person. It's 10 steps.
Yes.
And it used to be only Google did 10 interviews. Now everybody does 10 interviews.
Interesting. So tell me, during this time of COVID, a lot of people are getting sick. I mean, there's a lot of what's coming out of this is that, COVID is this viral infection, and it's adversely affecting individuals with health. I was reading a ton of articles last night, some research articles, about complicating factors, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, asthma, hypertension, having bad outcomes. How can a job impact your health? Can it adversely affect your health? And can it affect it in a positive way?
It can affect it in a positive way. So if you're in the right place, in the right culture, where the things you bring to the table are valued, I talk about having a job where your bosses don't care about your right arm and your left leg. So imagine what it'd be like to go through life with only a left arm and a right leg.
Right.
And that's what it's like when you're in a place where you have things you could bring to the table and they're not valued.
Right.
So being in a place, A, where the things that you're asked to do, you excel, so therefore you're valued. B, you actually love doing them, because you and I both know there are things we're really good at that we would rather not do.
Absolutely.
Love does not equal excel, and vice versa.
Right.
So that's huge. The cultural fit, that is huge. So the athlete I talked to recently, who's in a company where the CEO wants it to be a family, he would like it to be a team. He sees this as very different. I get it. He's not going to thrive in this environment. He's going to be frustrated by it. So if you're in an environment that works for you, you care about the product or service, your skills are valued, then everything else actually works outside. And so I literally have had people say, my health is better. People wonder what changed. I mean, one client, basically, people are like, did you change your hair? She's like, no, I got a career coach and I changed my job.
Yeah.
And she's also the one whose children raised their reading levels by 2 grades.
Wow. So this can really affect a whole family unit, can affect your health and so forth and so on.
Exactly.
What do you do with a sports figure who wants a team environment, doesn't want the family environment? Is that not a good fit at that point? Is that something that you say, okay, we have to look for another position? You got to change your mindset, and you have to look for something a little bit different, because it's really not a good fit for you.
Yes. So what that person needs to do is go out, and then one of the first things we need to do is we need to look at the executive team, and we want to look for former athletes. We want to look for people who are engaged in some kind of sport. And certainly in California, there are a lot of people still actively engaged in sports well into middle life. So first thing I said is let's look for athletes. Another thing you want to look for is, does their sales organization have a bias towards college athletes? Because a lot of sales orgs do. And that would be an environment where they have a bias towards hiring athletes right out of college. Now, as a musician, I'd say you could build leadership skill and discipline and responsibility as a musician, but there is a bias towards, in some companies, the collegiate athlete. As a baseball fan, I totally respect and get that. So what he needs to do is move to an environment like that, where the company really sees it as, we're on a team and we celebrate wins. And that's where he needs to be. And there are companies like that. And there may even be a few of them in the Bay Area.
There you go. That sounds interesting, because once you're in a wrong job, it adversely affects just about every aspect of your life, right? Is that correct?
It is completely correct. It adversely affects your health, your marriage's health, your children, and anybody else who's counting on you, whether it's elderly parents or your religious community or your neighborhood association, whatever it is, it has a tremendous impact. That's why I look at my life today and I say, I'm still committed to making a difference in the lives of families. I'm just focused on different members of the family.
Right. Because I could tell you, I love being a chiropractor. I love being a nutritionist. It's what I've been put on this earth for. And I really love those two jobs. I have other jobs too, but for how I make my money, those, I can't see doing anything else. But at one point I almost left the chiropractic profession because I had a position in an office that just was the wrong fit for me, and it was very difficult, and we struggled. We were just married. We struggled with marriage. I struggled growing as a person. There was no personal growth. I was miserable. My nieces and nephews didn't like to be around me, and I could tell you, Uncle Danny is the goofy uncle that it's always telling jokes and so forth. So when we were talking about having you on a podcast and you were telling me what you were doing, I'm like, this is fascinating to me because you're using mindset, you're using body, mind, spirit to help find that ideal job for you. And coming out of COVID, it's extremely important to have that, right? And
Yeah.
how long does it take to get a job today?
That's a great question.
Is it taking a little bit longer? I know that April 2021, you said that you had a lot of individuals find jobs, but is it something where it's taking a little time right now?
That's a great question. So pre-COVID, I would say people under 40 and I tend to work with people, W-2 jobs, private sector, some nonprofit, because my background is in both of those. And I'd say people under 40 landed in 3 months if they worked their plan with me. Now, darn well, as a nutritionist, sometimes people agree to a plan and then don't work the plan, and lo and behold, things don't work real well.
Yeah, that 50 pounds that needs to be lost because they have little cholesterol, or they got some cardiovascular. It doesn't go away that way when you're eating pizza every night. So.
Exactly, darn. But so anyway, folks who are older in the tech world, there tends to be a fair amount of age discrimination. So it takes a little longer. Plus, you're at a higher level, and there are fewer of those jobs.
Are they looking for younger individuals in the techie jobs?
In the venture-backed tech startup world, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
However, people are starting to learn that it is smart not to work for a CEO under 35.
Mm-hmm.
Even people under 35 realize that now. But anyway, so age does have something to do with duration. Today, there are two things that can make it take longer. One is this interview process that used to be 2 calls and an on-site, and bam, you're hired. Mm-hmm. And now is 10 Zoom interviews spread out, plus a whole bunch of homework assignments. And so that takes longer. That whole process takes longer. But there's another piece, and my one-on-one clients get together biweekly as a group. And our last conversation was exactly about the fact that sometimes they start the work with me, and then life happens and they just don't have the energy to go all the way through. And so they take a bit of a pause. And that pause varies from person to person. I call it COVID molasses. It feels like you're moving through molasses. It would be a little like a lot of people's experience of depression, but these are people who don't, or at least pre-COVID, never had clinical depression. Right. And so they just they're not ready to do the last piece of the puzzle. And then all of a sudden one day, bam, they're ready. And then everything falls into place because we built a plan and all they had to do was act on it. Right. And the interviews are coming and the offers come. And the 2 people who spoke to the group on our last call were really telling those stories. One had just accepted her dream job offer, and one is now interviewing with so many companies. He's already starting to cull the field and may not even follow through on all the interview processes that he could be in right now because he's being selective. We're choosing for him. So yeah, it does take longer, and some of it's a mindset thing and a fear thing, and just it's so hard to move and take action. Another client talks about loving being the person who cooks every night for dinner for their family, loves coaching t-ball, loved helping their children with homeschooling. and their children are still not back to school. So they're still doing that. And they're just having trouble motivating themselves, despite having a coach, to kind of take the next step. And that all of that is normal. And that's sometimes why it's nice to have a coach too, because it's not all on your spouse to have those conversations about what do we do to get you motivated.
Right.
Because your family needs you to go back to breadwinning.
Now, here's an off the cuff question. What happens with somebody like me if I come to see you and I'm the entrepreneurial type and, you know, you want me to go, I'm thinking about changing careers. Do you ever say to somebody like me, well, you need to get your own company as opposed to be working for somebody because, you know, it's not going to work out too well for you? And as my wife says to me, well, you know what? You can never work for anybody. I said, I got a tough boss already. It's me. So I don't know. I don't know if I can, you know, take direction. I don't know. And that's not in a derogatory sense that I can't take direction. But, you know, I'm going to look at you and say, huh, you want me to do what? Well, I have 35 years of running a business. I think you should do this instead of that. Do you ever say to somebody you should open up your own business?
I have had those conversations with people. There are people, I'll give you an example. Sometimes there are people who are not going to pass the I want to drink with him on Friday night test, which, believe it or not, is a major test in interviews. Is even when you're not talking about tech startup run by 35-year-olds, even full-fledged 50-year-old grown-ups do pretty much hire for I want to hang out with them Friday night after work. Mm-hmm. So people who are extremely expert at what they do, but can't pass that test, a good option is for them to hang out there on shingle. Mm-hmm. Because when you're consulting, people don't care if they want to have drinks with you on Friday night. They want you to come in, be an expert at the thing that nobody in their company knows how to do, fix it and go away. And Absolutely. So for some people, that's the right thing. For some people, they want to make a move from entrepreneur back to W-2 employee, and that move is hard. It is very hard to convince anyone once you've been out on your own boss for 10, 15 years, let alone 35. It's very hard to talk anyone into hiring you. Can you do it? Yes, but it's not going to be easy. And so we do talk about if somebody says they want to be something, and I'm thinking this is probably not going to work, I'm going to tell them it's going to take longer. It's going to be hard. We can go for it anyway. And also, hey, let's talk about this. So my client with the children with the improved reading levels, mm-hmm. we actually had her doing freelance work, and she was working 2 gigs, mm-hmm. making more money, and there after school 3 days a week and with her kids. And so for her, it was actually leaving W-2 for a number of years. I think she went to work for one of those companies eventually, but so everybody's different. This is not cookie cutter. There is no one right career for everybody. There's no one right path. And it's about figuring out what's right for you and thinking about who will want to pay you. And that might be as a consultant, and it might be as an employee, and it might be as a business person launching your own business.
Right, sure. You know, it is. I mean, for me, it would be very difficult at this point in my life, being, you know, pushing 60 years old in less than a year. And, you know, for me to be working with somebody or for somebody, you know, I'm definitely that entrepreneurial type that I need to be, I don't want to say in charge, but I like and I love the startup. I'm sitting here in the startup office right now. And it's actually taken off. And, and I said to my partner, I said, this is my favorite part, by the way, is creating something from nothing. So it'd be difficult if I were to come to you then, right?
Yes, I think we talk about maybe just what is it that is inspiring you to want to make a change, and maybe we need to talk about who you need to hire for your business so you can focus on the fun stuff instead. And that would probably be the conversation we would have.
And it's amazing when you find something that you love to do, everything is just so much better.
Oh, to me, here's my litmus test. was exposed to mold that caused a number of medical conditions, and one of them was fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get on a coaching call and the pain would go away.
Really? Because you just had your juices flowing.
Yeah.
You had
And
the
then,
endorphins.
yeah. Yes, and it was, there was no medicine as good as that. Unfortunately, I couldn't be on calls 24/7, so that wasn't so good. So that's one way to know that you are in your life purpose. A current challenge just disappears. Your energy level is there no matter what else is going on in your life, what other challenges you're facing. So there is definitely a sense of purpose. I feel a little like my executive days and my consulting days are the white fluff in an Oreo cookie, and my YMCA days and what I'm doing now, that's my real purpose stuff.
Right. Sure.
And the other stuff just kind of made what I'm doing now possible, but the purpose stuff is the Oreo cook, the chocolate of the Oreo cookie is definitely
right. Sure. I get it. So you mentioned the word challenge. What was the most difficult challenge you've had during COVID helping an individual out?
That's such a good question.
You know what? When Mike put us together and he said, I think that you guys are going to have a great conversation, which we are, you know, he knows that I throw those questions out. I did it with him and he was like, oh my goodness, I don't believe you asked me that. So it's all good.
Well, I actually think that the biggest challenge right now is the father who enjoys cooking dinners and coaching t-ball. And so that's my current one. I haven't resolved that one yet.
Right.
Because he's just really happy. And at some point, he and his wife are going to look at the numbers and it's going to be its time. And he might get a consulting gig as his transition back. I think that'll get his juices flowing. So I'm supporting that decision because I think when he gets back in the saddle, I think he's going to go, oh, okay, this world is still out here and I've still got it. And his wife will be like, thank you, because she does not have the income to carry the family.
Yeah, to sustain.
Exactly.
You know.
So I'd say that's, and I love working with him, but I would say that's probably the one that is kind of, okay, how are we going to get there? But I now feel like we've got it. I think if he can get a consulting gig to get him back out there doing what he's good at, I think he's going to be like, oh, okay, I'm ready now.
I'm having a good time. I'm ready, and so forth. You know, it's interesting how you say that. The dad that's home cooking and coaching the t-ball. You know, I had to pivot, and we were doing a lot of telehealth. And in my state, we were deemed essential, so we had the ability to go to work. But a lot of patients, they did in fact want to do the telehealth because it was the beginning of the pandemic. And it was great because, I mean, we were all home and, you know, my son was home and, you know, he was in his room going to school, but he was out at 1 o'clock because there was no lunch, there were no breaks, you know, and then we had the rest of the day. I loaded up on telehealth in the morning. And so we were able to go out and, you know, run. We were playing basketball, we were playing baseball, we were, you know, having a good time. You know, my wife was along for the runs and so forth. So there was a lot of family time. And then as things were loosening up and so forth, you know, you know, he went back to school, and it was a bit of a challenge because you get used to your family, right? when you're doing that. And, you know, one of my whys is my son. So it's, you know, it was great. It was great spending that time with him, you know, but it's still difficult with a 13-year-old because he knows or she knows better than mom and dad 100% of the time. So, so let's talk about careers a little bit. Let's talk about, what does a resilient job search look like? Is there a lot of frustration that goes on? You're going to have to be resilient because you got to look at a lot of different things. Let's talk about this for a bit.
So one of the reasons I call what I do taking charge is because all the conventional methods for job searching don't put you in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
And that really does mean you're not set up for resilience in your career. So from a job search perspective, the conventional methodologies are apply for jobs If you're really organized and disciplined, you have a spreadsheet and you track every job you apply for and whether you get an interview, and you can tell me exactly what % of the applications turn into an interview. You also are not going to land a job very fast. It's going to take way longer than it would if you worked with me. That's not a sales pitch, it's actually fact. But so there's that piece of the puzzle. And then there's the waiting for the recruiters to call, which is about as effective as sitting at home as a teenager when your son is 16, waiting for the head cheerleader to call him to ask him out. That is not going to be his path to get to the prom. So
I love that.
So, and every time I tell that story, people are like, oh, that's why waiting for recruiters to call doesn't make any sense. It just clicks. No matter whether you were a geek like I was in high school, or you were popular, you get the quarterback and the head cheerleader and it works. So part of a resilient job search, which then builds a resilient career, is that you're not dependent on those sources. You go out and you build a list of target companies, and then you figure out how to, what I call, tap into the rich daddy network. So most of us don't have, or didn't have when we graduated from college, a rich daddy who called his golf buddy and got us our first job. I don't know about you, but I didn't have one.
Wendy, there was no golf buddy coming from North Jersey, coming from an immigrant family.
Exactly.
It was go to work. I don't care what you do.
Yeah, and I don't care if you like it either. So
yeah, pretty much.
So my dad liked to say, because he has dementia now, but he liked to say, that's why they call it work, Wendy. So, but what we do is we can use both our social map of the people we know from our pre and post COVID lives where we interact with people, and our LinkedIn networks to actually get people to open doors for us by making it easy for them to help. Because what do people desperately want right now? Connection. What is a way to feel connection? Helping people. But if you go to someone and say, I need a job, they go, I don't have one. I feel like crap about that. I'm going to hide from you now. So you make it easy for them to open doors for you. That's how you're in charge. That's how you're in a driver's seat. And then for the career to be resilient, it's about having options and not being dependent on one company. So if you're going to move to a new city, making sure that there are multiple companies you could work for in that city. Making sure that your background is going to be attractive to different paths for businesses that are likely to thrive. So right now we look for CEOs who led companies during the 08-09 financial crisis and led companies in the post 9/11 period. That's who you want to see running your new company right now. People who've already been through a bad time.
They are resilient. They can make decisions quickly, appropriately, effectively, and make, decisions for the company to help them thrive, right?
Yes. And prioritize. In my experience post 9/11, we had a lot of bomb scares after 9/11 in downtown San Francisco. And I suddenly became aware of the fact I wasn't just responsible for making decisions that protected the livelihoods of my employees and the 400 people who worked for me, but that their personal safety in the workplace was also my responsibility. And that was, we're talking about, I was in my mid 30s, and I had goosebumps thinking about the responsibility I felt in that moment. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, sure. Now, that's a resilient job search. What is a resilient career? Because once you get the job, now you got to perform at the job. Do you say to individuals that this may be a job for good for you for 5 years, and then we're going to revisit this? Or is this like a lifetime career? Because it used to be where you got a job and you stayed with the same company. Yeah. Now everybody, I have a cousin who's a techie type of a guy, and he has an MBA. He's like every 2 to 3 years. He's like moving because they're offering more money, better benefits, and all of that. What does that resilient career look like?
So one thing you want to do is be thinking about that the things that you do will be in demand now and 5 years from now, and depending on your age, 10 and 15 years from now. So you're looking at that. You're choosing, if you're in the startup world, the venture-backed startup world, you're choosing companies that are invested in by great track record venture capitalists. If you're in big companies, whether it's tech or not, you're looking at, are these positioned to grow? And then if I don't like this culture, I can move to a competitor, or this tech will evolve into that tech. But you want to see a path. We pay attention to trends. My clients used to wonder why I made them look at trends, except now post-COVID, everybody understands it. It was funny how that just kind of drove it home.
Right.
But that's part of a resilient career, that you're making decisions, looking at a long game, looking at the leadership of the companies, looking at the products, looking at how that will be impacted. I have a client right now where we're looking at, he does work in companies that have manufacturing. So what's happened in the last 14 months have to do with what will happen? And he's got maybe 10 years of work left. So how does manufacturing in China or elsewhere affect his career? And what do our relationships with those countries have to do with his career? And let's make smart decisions about that for him, because he still has to work for a company that does manufacturing. That's not going anywhere. He's got that skin in that game.
So you're looking at every aspect of this. You're looking at geopolitical, you're looking at long-term, short-term, you're looking at everything.
We are.
Now, we're almost done here. Not quite yet. See how fast it goes? We're at like,
yes.
We're at like 50, we're almost at 50 minutes, and I feel like we just started, but we're going to have you back on because everybody comes back on because there's just so much to talk about. Now, let me ask you a question. What happens if I were to come to see you and I would explain to you I've been entrepreneurial, but the entrepreneurial business that I've been in is no longer viable. It's just not going to be viable. I can't provide for my family and so forth. You've known me now for a little bit, right? We've spoken off camera. What would you recommend for me to do? Oh, geez. We're gonna get down and dirty, Wendy.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready. You know what?
Okay.
I'm ready for anything. I mean, what would you recommend for me, and how would you approach this with me?
So what I would do is, it's actually not a lot different than what I do with people who like working for people. It's just a twist. So what we have to figure out is, okay, so a business you loved is no longer viable. We have to look at the trends, look at what you have as sellable skills, and say, where is there a need that you can meet? And how much lead time from a marketing perspective or from an investment perspective is needed, and does that work? And we'd be mapping out all those options. And the first thing we do is we look at everything that you can do, every talent, every skill. We look at the things you've done as a parent, that you've done as a son, you've done as a husband, and everything you've been paid for. And we get really comprehensive about that, because sometimes there's a little mystery thing going on there that actually might now be valuable, and you might actually get paid for it. Right. And figure out how to align those things at something where there is a viable business. And so that's what we would do. It's not really any different than somebody who wants another job and looking at, how do I pivot, because what I used to do is no longer going to pay my bills. It's the same thing. You're just going to be your own boss, and we have to figure out viability of startup costs and marketing and things like that.
All right. So what do you think my top 3 sellable skills are, and where would that go? What type of career would you put me in?
So usually I ask a lot of questions to find out those things.
Okay, that's okay. I mean, we are among friends, Wendy. So what are my top 3 sellable skills? And
so first of all, you do nutrition and chiropractic care. So the chiropractic care means a certain comfort level with, I may be insulting you, but the less conventional.
Correct. It's an alternative.
It's alternative medicine.
Healthcare.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So that's a huge thing. This ability to be comfortable there, that actually usually correlates with a higher level of intelligence. My
wife disagrees with you already, so.
Well, and I have to keep the wives happy. Yeah. So, but first I focus on getting you happy, because ultimately she'll be happy if you're happy.
Yeah.
Other thing we talk about is extroversion. Another thing I would kind of play with is, you said you started the podcast during COVID?
Yes.
And how many viewers do you have usually?
We can go up to 15,000 views.
Yes. So that tells me that there's something about your ability to market yourself that is exceptional, because that's COVID's only been going on for 14 months. So I think that that would be a thing that we would look at, because what that tells us is you have more options to do something new because you have an ability to build an audience quickly.
Yes.
And that gets you to money quicker. And that's how we pay the bills.
Alternative healthcare, you have to have that ability to communicate what you
Yes.
do, quickly, because if you don't, it's not good.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Okay. So what job do you think I would be good at besides sales? And if it's sales, what type of sales job?
So actually, one thing is it's a sales variant, but business development is the deal makers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sales, it's really sales, politics, and business strategy in one job. So
you're singing my language.
So that to me, and now there are people who play with the titles, but conventional titling is
Right.
that sales is I have a quota, I sell X amount, and my deals are bigger if I'm older and more experienced, and smaller if I'm younger and greener. But BuzzDev is my business needs strategic relationships with other companies, and I go and make them happen.
Right,
and I make
right.
sure they're beneficial to both sides. And that's an ability to see things creatively, which then alternative medicine has prepared you to do.
Right.
And then you've got the political thing, an extrovert thing, and you've got business strategy. Obviously, you've got some ability to do that given your entrepreneurial success.
Right. There you go. I like that. And you're very accurate in your assessment. My partner just put underneath the door, a good job for you. I can't even tell you what he said. So
We'll be polite in this conversation.
Yeah, we're being nice. We're being nice. So listen, Wendy, this has been a great conversation. I want to have you on again because I think we're just tapping the surface on what we can do to help motivate, educate, and inspire, because that's what we like to do here on the podcast. Now, how can individuals contact you?
So the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, because that's just the center of the universe for careers. So I was the first Wendy Taylor on LinkedIn. I joined in 2003. So I'm linkedin.com/in/Wendy Taylor. And you'll see someone who looks a little like this in the pictures. I'm teaching a class called Jobs and Jazz in those photos that was held at the church I went to at the time. And it says taking charge in the background. So then you'll know you found the right person. You can also just search on LinkedIn for Wendy Taylor taking charge and you will find me. It does say on there that I focus on two kinds of roles. And that's because my marketing gurus tell me that that's the way you handle that. But I will tell you that makes up 50% of my practice. And I have an art museum curator, a professional musician, and a CFO of credit unions in my current client roster. So you do not have to be a product manager or a marketer to.
I will make sure that it's in the show notes so that individuals can contact you. Wendy.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for coming on today. I think this is an important topic to discuss. Coming out of COVID, people are pivoting jobs and so forth and so on. It's extremely important. So I want to thank you for coming on to help motivate, educate, and inspire. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I'm Dr. Dan. You can find me at suburbanwellnessgroup.com, 973-483-2277, GFC, Goldman Family Chiropractic, 732-577-9600, Nutrition in Westfield, 908-233-4200. I got all these offices. So I want to thank you, Wendy, for coming on. Great conversation. I want to thank everybody for listening. Until next time, live your best life. Thank you.